Like if you and I want to make a difference for somebody or our children or grandchildren, there's 3 skills you got to master. If you're going to be in a world where right now, depending on you read Oxford studies, they say, by 2040, which is you're going to blink your eyes and you're there. That's, 18 years.
Yeah.
You're going to see 45% of all current jobs will be gone, right? They're going to be replaced by robotics. They're going to be replaced by algorithms. They're going to be replaced by artificial intelligence. So how do I take my 9-month-old daughter or my grandchildren and prepare them? 3 skills will make you successful no matter how long you live, no matter what changes in society.
Welcome to the Mindset by Design podcast with your host, the expert Andy Murphy, where you will learn the tips, tricks, and strategies he teaches his world-class clients to give you the skills to dominate any business.
What's going on, Mindset by Design crew, and welcome to episode 349. Hope you're amazing as always. I really do. Do you know what? I was just sitting here and I was wondering what to record today. And of course, got to go sometimes to the godfather of personal development. You've got Mr. Tony Robbins. And no matter what you think of Tony, Tony is a badass. He really, really is, And I put that clip in because it kind of blew my mind. Do you know what I mean? It kind of blew my mind because obviously Tony's, if he's not a billionaire, he's very, very close. I know his companies do billions of dollars a year. So he's probably pretty close, right? And he started off as a mindset guy. Think about that. A mindset guy that understood that the number one criteria for performing in business and understanding pattern recognition and modeling people and really just building yourself and learning those skills to play business at that level. Well, he knows it's all about tuning your brain, right? Tuning how you perform, your nervous system and your brain. And that's everything, right? So what was crazy is that stat, right? In 18 years, so by 2040, it means that, basically the world's going to be automated. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, and neither does really Tony, but Tony's going to probably know more than most of us, right? Because he's connected to all of those guys who are building this stuff. But it's crazy to think, right? Because the world that we knew, I don't know how old you are, but I'm getting old now, and I remember the days before internet. Do you know what I mean? We grew up before internet. Probably the last generation to ever do that. And what was wild is how much the world has radically changed. And it's not slowing down. It's only speeding up. And think about these tech companies, and that's all Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's all they are. They're just tech companies created a product, but because they've done it so well, they completely integrated it 24/7 into the whole world in their life, right? That's crazy. But what people don't understand is it is just a piece of software. It's not life. But we have such a default setting as a human being to have deep connections with people, right? Solitary confinement. Why would that be a punishment in prison? You're just hanging out on your own, right? Because as a human species, we are very interconnected. And that's why social network is social network. It's not the movie. Yeah, it's the movie, right? But social media really just connects everybody. And that's what people crave for. But what's wild is what's going to happen. Do we become more connected with augmented reality, virtual reality, and being able to read people's thoughts, which is probably going to happen, right? Neuralink. Does it mean that we become more connected or more disconnected? Because if you look at, have you ever seen the movie Real Player One? It's a badass movie, and it's done by Spielberg. And you probably want to watch some of the movies that Spielberg brings out because, I don't know, you might know a few things, right? And when you look at that, Real Player One, if you've never watched it, definitely watch it. It's a good movie, but it's really, the concept is wild because people's lives on the outside world, right, are messed up. They're living in crap houses. They're they're really not healthy, but then they put the goggles on first thing in the morning and ba-ba, you're in a whole different world. This is what the metaverse is basically. And well, it is what the metaverse is going to be at some point. Even Goldman Sachs, I'm sure it was Goldman Sachs, said that it's like a $7 trillion industry. And they're investing heavily in it just as, anyway, conversations for a different time. But back to this. And one of the things Tony recognizes, and we'll get into this in the clip, is that if you can create yourself into being the superhuman version of you, meaning that you understand how to optimize you, if you know how to build patterns inside of your brain, if you know how to switch on like laser focus and do that for the hours, if not days, if not weeks, right? If you're able to model people and accelerate your own performance because you adapt to a new behavior or a new belief system that radically changes how you see the world and how you perform in it. And pattern recognition, right? Being able to recognize patterns in people's behavior, but the economy, the markets, the trends of what's happening, even what's on social media, or like Gary Vaynerchuk does, right? Being a futurist and seeing what will come. That's what Gary's badass at. And when we can start to understand that you are already a supercomputer, do you know what I mean? But you really are. You really are. If we rewound it to when computers first started, then, AI is being modeled after your brain or our brains, not just yours, mine too. Yeah? It's being modeled after that. And, when we go back to thinking that we had all these servers and they were rooms and rooms and rooms of servers, right? These huge things, these huge computers that would run the most basic things, and our phone is more powerful than them all, and we have it in our pocket. So things keep changing, things keep moving. And what I'm here to say with this little rant I'm going on today, but you're used to that if you are a regular listener, it's a case of we have to adapt. We have to grow, we have to change, we have to have extreme behavioral flexibility. It's the only way we can market our services. It's the only way we can cut through the noise. It's the only way that we can serve as many people as we can in our lifetime. That's it, right? So whether we're coming from the neuroscience and the chemicals in the brain, whether we're coming from advanced strategies and marketing, whether we're coming from an aspect of being able to be in control of ourselves, whether we're coming from wherever, right? The ultimate thing is it all starts with you. Always starts with you. And that's why ultimately you can create anything that you want, even in this crazy world that's going on right now, right? If you didn't watch social media, if you didn't watch the news, if you didn't look at any media outlet and you just lived your life, then where would your focus be? Would your focus be on all the chaos that's out there? Or would your focus be on making you into that bulletproof, badass version of you? Making yourself radical, right? Would that be the goal? Yes. And if it was the mission, then how would your life be? Probably be way more ahead of than where you are right now, right? Probably. And you're probably in an awesome space. You probably are. But guess what? There are levels of the game, and there's levels of your brand and your business and who you are. And that's what I'm here to help. That's all the Mindset by Design podcast is about. It's giving you the tools and strategies, or a glimpse into them anyway, to be able to, help yourself. That's all this is about. This is why I created this podcast many years ago now. And it's just about you getting more and more tools so you can become mentally bulletproof. So you can have complete control of your mind, your emotions, the peak state, and how you live, and therefore your life, your business, your income streams. And that's really what I'm here to give you in everything that I produce, right? So hopefully you start seeing things a different way, because we'll jump into this interview. It's a really cool interview with Tony. It's by Ed Mylett again, because I really like these interviews from the last one. And speaking of interviews, if you have not listened to the previous episodes, Come on, man. God, these are badass episodes, right? We've got Mr. Jim Quick, memory hacks to end your negative self-talk in 2022. We have the episode before, 347, Mr. Beast, how hyper obsession made him the number one YouTuber in the world. And if you've not listened to that, go listen to that. You'll realize what it takes. Episode before that, the 5 keys to deep sleep for brain performance, with a brilliant clip from an English neuroscience guy. Epic. Alan Watts is number 345. This is where business, life, and the universe are all one. We went down a little rabbit hole, bit of philosophical. Go listen to that episode if you haven't already. And then we went to 344, which is the number one brain tool to instantly see success in 2022. That one, if you haven't listened to, please do. It's where we go into the filter system in the brain and how you can change reality really, really fast, man. So what else we got? Oh yeah, 343. Why building your own media empire must be your number one skill for success in 2022. And you know what? That is the truth. And it's probably a good little lay-in to be able to help yourself here, because do you know what? Social media is really, really busy. Have you noticed this? Yeah. And it gets harder to cut through that noise. It gets harder to be seen, and your content's probably badass, right? It probably is badass. But I don't know whether you're experiencing things like everybody else. Right? Not everybody, I shouldn't say that, but many people, right? People are just not getting seen. And it's a heartbreaking thing. It really, really is. And do you know why, I'm doing an episode on Tony Robbins, right? I'm doing an episode, a clip from Ed Mylett. And guess why? I'm playing that clip. Because they created something called a personal brand. Yeah, a personal brand, it's brand. And what we do at the Radical Formula is we are personal brand engineers. We're engineering people's brands. That's why I connected with Ryan Alford. He's got the number 20, I think it's top 24 in the US podcast in business. Do you know what I mean? He's just a badass. He's worked with Apple. He's worked with everybody. And we teamed up to give people these tools, because what we're going to do is give you access to a community, give you access to lives with us each week that you can jump on and get hot seats. You're going to have a whole digital ever-growing library. And as I say, that community all around the world. And it's all designed for one thing: to give you maximum exposure so you can go and help people, help your family, help everyone by creating the brand that you deserve. That's it, right? So combined 45 years experience doing this, and we want to give you the tools. It should be launched by the end of the month, and then we start in 2 weeks, and that will be our first venture. So the training will be out, the webinar, whatever you want to call it. It's not really a webinar, it's just badass. You want to see it, man. It's so good. And the information that we give in there is really, really cool, and it's only like about 25 minutes long, right? And you're going to know whether you want to join or not, but that's the second step. The first step is getting there. But you can jump on the list right now, and yeah, you can get a little training too. There's a cool little bit of 15-minute training where you can get to know me and Ryan a bit more. But yeah, just go to theradicalformula.com. And hey, when we launch this thing, you're going to want to be a part of it, because the price is just going to go up and up and up and up and up and up. And you want to be in this beta group to get the best badass discount you can possibly get. And you're going to be grandfathered, grandmothered. What is it? You're going to be locked into that price too, which is really, really cool. So go to theradicalformula.com and go and kick ass. If you are a trader, this is number 2, right? All of these are about giving you freedom. Number 2, if you're a trader, whether it's crypto, stocks, forex, options, whatever it is, you need a foundational brain training system. That's the geniustrader.com. Actually, it's not .com, it's .club, because it's a club, the Genius Trader Club. We've had so much feedback, so many testimonials, life-changing for so many people. And you've got access to it right now. So head over to thegeniustrader.club. take a look at what's inside and decide if it's for you today. So both of those things, theradicalformula.com, thegeniustrader.club, go and check them out and contact me anywhere. Andy Murphy Mindset on all social media. So go and do that now. Go and do that and let's have an amazing year together. And speaking of something amazing, should we jump into this episode? Sure, let's jump into this episode and I will see you at the end of the show.
Gratitude destroys the two emotions that wipe out most people's quality of life, fear and anger. Think about it. What messes up your relationship? What messes up your body? What messes up your business? Fear and anger. So if you're in a situation where you're grateful, you can't be grateful and angry simultaneously. It's gone. And instead of being grateful for some phony thing, you're remembering a real moment and you're reliving it in your body. So it activates your nervous system, not just your mind. And that's a big difference.
We're in this time where there's so much uncertainty externally in people's lives. You know, what's happening on with the pandemic, masks, no masks, all the political discourse, all this stuff, this noise, this uncertainty. And I think there's so much angst and anxiety in our culture right now. So many people listening to this or watching it right now. What would you say to them that are experiencing those emotions right now? What advice would you give them?
They got to turn off the news. I know that sounds overly simplistic, but you got to at least turn it off a little bit so you can get a breath. Because unfortunately today, it's hard to turn it off since it follows you. I mean, most people have seen The Social Dilemma. They understand that literally you are being tracked in every single thing you speak, say, do, and everything you're going to see. And it's different if you type in global warming and you're one person, you're going to complete different set of answers than if you type in global warming and you're another person. So we're living in a world where it's hard to find truth. And so the first place you got to realize is you can't control out the outside world. You can influence it, but we can control the inside world. And if you get yourself overwhelmed, it's because all this is coming at you. You got to slow it down, stop it, and say, now, what am I going to create out of this insanity? Because that's the great thing that happens. And I know it sounds, optimistic and I think you know me well enough. I'm not one of those positive thinkers. I've never been. I believe in intelligence. I believe in seeing things as they are, but not worse than it is. So you don't try. But then you got to see it better than it is, or you can't make it better. And then you got to go to work and get the right strategies to make it happen. So for me, it's really slow it down. And everyone needs a compelling future. What do I mean by that? Anybody can deal with a tough today if they have a compelling tomorrow. But what's happened is there are a large number of people that after the first run of 2020, we were coming into January, and I remember that, and people are like, all right, now it's a new world, it's a new life, it's going to go great. And then, all of a sudden more people died in 2021 with vaccines and with all these details that we have. And so people are uncertain. And then we got Omicron and people are making it like the Great Plague, when if you actually look at the science, the vast majority are showing it's more like a cold or a really gentle flu. But it doesn't matter. We're tracking everything now. If you imagine if we were tracking the flu constantly and where it was, we don't test everybody so we don't freak out all the time. So what are you going to do to create a compelling future for yourself? What do you really want this year to be about, regardless of what's going on in the outside world? You might say, well, Tony, that's easy to say, but they're controlling my business or they're shutting me down here. You can move. You can make new choices. I know they're not easy ones, but you got to get to the point where you say, I won't settle for less than I can really do, be, share, create, and give in my life, for my family, for myself, for what I want for my life. There's a point we got to say enough is enough, and you got to start to take control.
Let me jump in there, crew. Let me jump in there. Well, for a start, Tony's hyped up, man. Maybe he had some coffee. Maybe he's just pumped up, but he's talking faster and more intense than me. But what he's saying is beautiful. A compelling future. Do you know what I mean? When I go back and look over 20 years of doing this game, you know what I mean? I first started out in NLP in sales, and I became one of the top performers in Australia. Then I became one of the top performers in New Zealand. And what happened was, after putting together the resort in Fiji, going through bankruptcy, having a nervous breakdown, business partner steal all my money when I was like 27. You probably heard the story, right? But what was it that got me out of that situation? Now, there's been many situations since then. Life is never smooth. But what got me out of this situation? Well, like he says, a compelling future. Because it doesn't really matter it doesn't matter where you are in your life, right? I remember sitting there and my car got taken away, my 5 Series BMW that I thought was really important. Really important. I really did. But I watched it got taken away, and that was like my old life being taken away too. And what really got me through this was I created a new vision. And it was intuitive, it was connected, but it was a new vision. And I really wanted to become world-class in neurolinguistics and help people in performance in any way, right? And that's exactly what it did. But in those dark times, it's only when you have a glimmer of a light that you can have a decision to choose that glimmer of light. And so it doesn't matter what's happening today. There's so many people that become multimillionaires in 12 months. There's so many people that have an idea that they didn't know, right? You've got so much in history. Even the random one that comes up is Colonel Sanders, right? KFC. Now, KFC was probably a bit healthier back then than it probably is now with mutant birds. But it's a case of he was like 65, I think, or 66. Before he had that idea, and then it was how many? It was close to 100 people turned him down for investment, but then he still kept going. And it's just a case of that's with everything, right? With everything. So if you have a vision for your life, if you have a vision for your business, if you have a vision for where you want to go, then make that image in your brain bigger and bigger and brighter and more exciting than you ever could think was possible. Because when you do that, that's what the feeling you want is, that's pulling you towards it with a big grin on your face. Then all the things that you're doing now, doesn't matter if you're really working too hard, then you'll work clever and then it'll get easier. Then you'll be suddenly living in this next stage in your life. And that's what Tony is talking about. That designing that image, designing that alignment, heading towards a mission is what gives entrepreneurs especially fuel. Why? Because we live in the unknown. We have an imagination, we have an idea, and then we go, all right, I'm going to go and do that. But that's how life really works. And anyone who says it any different, they just don't understand how life really works.
How do you do that? One of the things that you say that I love is fear is physical. And yes, what I learned from you so many years ago that transformed my life is to begin to learn to change my state with my physiology. Yes. Everything in my life starts with my physiology, from my fitness, but also when I'm feeling something I don't want to feel, I try to shift my physiology. And I just heard you recently say this, so I'd like you to speak to it, that fear is also a physical thing. I want you to elaborate a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, if you're concerned about COVID, according to CDC, and I have this in my new book, the number one, issue besides age, obviously, the number one piece is being overweight, right? Or obese. That is number one. And just this week, CNN, New York Times, for the first time, 2 years later, are coming and saying, well, you can reduce your risk if you take care of your body, right? Yeah. Do you know what number two is, according to the CDC? Fear. Because when you get fearful, it changes your breathing, your body temperature, your tension in your body. All these things can create a trigger of reactions, hormones in your body that make you crazy. So when I say fear is physical, here's what I mean. Fear is physical, by the way, so is courage. Emotions are physical. If you're really scared, have you ever been at that point where you're like freaked out about something and you can't quite fully swallow, or you got that feeling in your gut?
Certainly.
But courage is also physical. That's what you're talking about. It's like I trained myself from a very young age that the number one thing I had to do so I would follow through on the things we're talking about here is I had to have a mind and body that were strong together. That every day I was going to do something to strengthen my body, even if it was just 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Something was going to shift me physiologically to do that. And so I get scared or I get frustrated and I go on a run, I go on a sprint, and I wasn't in shape, didn't matter. I pushed myself beyond what I was comfortable with. I go lift weights and I pushed beyond what I was comfortable with. And when you do that, everything in your nervous system changes. Because all of a sudden, when you face something and you push beyond the comfort zone, you get stronger and stronger. Even a little bit each day changes things. So think about it. Courage, you're not afraid, because there'd be no need for courage. Courage is you're scared pointless, but you do it anyway.
Yeah.
And so training your body, and you and I both do this, right? We train intensely because we know this is the resource through which my mind's going to try to make decisions. And then the second thing is every day you got to feed your brain, your mind, because if you don't, crap is going in there automatically. We all know that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, today it's chasing you because we all know, the news knows, they're not bad people, they're good people. They're just doing their job. Their job is make sure they make as much money for their shareholders. Right. And they know one formula works. And it's pretty obvious these last 2 years more than ever. If it bleeds, it leads. If it produces fear, more people watch. It's because we all have a 2 million-year-old brain that's always looking for what's wrong, what can hurt us. But your 2 million-year-old brain's not going to make you happy, right?
Yeah.
You have to take control of that 2 million-year-old brain and start to direct consciously what you want your life to be. So changing your body radically by a workout, by a run, by a push, by whatever you're going to do, shifting by feeding your brain every single day, and then making sure every day you're taking some form of action towards a compelling future. Like, what am I going to make better? If you have nothing to look forward to, you're going to be pissed off, you're going to be frustrated, you're going to be depressed, you're going to be overwhelmed. And in those emotional states, even though you're a smart person and you know lots of things, you won't use anything you know. So to me, the leverage to changing somebody's life is always starting with the human body.
Okay, crew, let me jump in there. Tony's still going on one. I love the energy. But I love what he said, fear is physical. Fear is physical, emotions are physical. And yes, they absolutely are, right? Because if we've got anxiety, it means we have adrenaline. And adrenaline means that we have a surge of that basically energy that we need to dispel so our nervous system can calm down, right? So there's many ways to do that. Physical is absolutely. We can also change the emotion inside of us, and that can change our state or the version of us, okay? So Tony's absolutely correct. Never going to argue with Tony. I also do the physical side, but also teach the internal, because we change the emotion, we can change how we see the world. Does that make sense? So when we watch a movie, for example, right, we could watch a martial arts movie, or even back in the day, right, Rocky, right? How many people when you were growing up watched Rocky and then you start shadowboxing down the road, right? Or Bloodsport with Van Damme, or Kickboxer or something like that, or even the UFC. If you're into martial arts like me, But if you do, guess what? You end up shadowboxing, moving your body. So there's two ways to do that. Physical changes the internal changes physical. In my opinion, it just simply depends on what, and who you are. I know that physically is probably a faster, and that's where Tony comes from, right? So I love that. And also, courage. Courage is I'm going to butcher the statement. It's by a colonel from the military. He's like, I've never, ever met a guy who wasn't fearful in battle. And he gives it, they're either stupid or they've got courage. They're brave. Because bravery isn't the absence of fear. It is the ability to switch on and overcome that fear and change the emotion into courage. And courage means that we walk forwards in bravery. We don't feel the fear and do it anyway. Whole different conversation. We don't do that, right? Because you're not going to perform at your ultimate best. What you're going to do is you're going to have a fear response, which can create anxiety. You're going to be reacting to stuff. But if we step forwards in courage, bravery, let's go, man. That's a different emotion. And that different emotion does what? Well, that creates a different result because we make different decisions. So I love what Tony's saying, and he's absolutely right, of course. 2 million outdated brain. Yeah, outdated genetics, man. And we are still looking for what is dangerous in the world while the world around us has become more soft. So what happens is it's become easier. Think about it, right? It's become easier than 300 years ago, isn't it? Right. There's different dangers now. And what happens when we're constantly blasted with that fear response, which I know Tony's going on about COVID right now, so I apologize, don't apologize, but Tony's going on about COVID because obviously this interview's probably like 6 to 12 months old. And what he was saying about that is fear directly affects your health. And we all know those studies. We all have experienced it inside of ourselves, right? We get sick. Our immune system gets lower. We don't get the right dopamine or serotonin levels in our brain. Things like that, man. So when we have that compelling future, then we can have that courage. And that courage makes us take action. Make sense?
If I started to speak to you and I spoke more at this tempo, and I said, yeah, Ed, I really think people should get their act together and make this their best year ever, right? I feel terrible in my body. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to talk fast or loud like me. That's my own physiology, but it's kind of trained. But everyone has different gears. And when you're low gears, like you can be in a great relationship, somebody you totally love, and you're both in a great physical state, emotional state, everything's great. You both get a little low from taking the kids to 20 soccer practices and cash flow problems in the business and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, same love doesn't feel like the same love. You still love each other, but it doesn't come across. And if you're both stressed out, then it creates problems in the relationship. So the most important factor in your life is the ability to manage your mental, emotional state. It is the one thing you have complete control of once you learn how. Then it becomes just the daily discipline. And it's not even discipline, it just becomes habit. To say, I'm not going to live in this lousy pace. I'm not going to put up with it. I know what to do. Let me do it. Let me move forward. But that's why, I do programs and events where I immerse people.
Yeah.
Because, you and I can talk about this 2 minutes, kind of nod your head. But if I put you in an experience,
correct.
I always tell people a belief is a poor substitute for an experience. You can have a belief about China. I take you to China, you're going to have an experience. It's very different.
So true.
And so I think human beings need to put themselves more in experiences. A lot of us today, especially with COVID, being stuck at home and doing business from home, a lot of people are stuck in their head. Yeah. And I tell you, get in your head, you're dead. You'll just go in circle.
Okay, crew, let me jump in there again. Yes, Tony's talking about COVID again, but this is the episode. It's interesting, though. I love what he said. Experiences are everything. And for the past 20 years, I've traveled, right? I've lived all around the world. And it's interesting. When I left when I was 24, I was doing okay, man. I was just, it was a couple of years. I'd just been out the England squad for martial arts. I'd got into IT, computers. I was a Microsoft certified engineer. Then I flew to Australia. But before that, I didn't realize I didn't know myself. Before that, I didn't realize that I was quite shy. And then I got to Australia, and that put me in a whole different experience. What the experience did was allow me to reboot. It allowed me to become me. It allowed me not to be held back by anybody else who had a different version of reality or opinion about me, or grew up with me, or you know what I mean, who held me at a standard that I used to be at. So it limits you. Unless you've traveled, unless you've spent a massive amount of time on your own, you don't really know yourself. It's the absolute truth, right? So what Tony's done is with these events, he's created experiences. The only challenge with those experiences is they're badass, but then people go away and they don't do the work, or they don't get that mentor around them, right? They don't do that extra thing to keep the mind muscle pumping so they become that new version of them. Or the updated or the true version of them, whatever you want to call it, man. But that's what traveling did for me. It gave me immersions in different worlds, and those worlds, those cultures, those perspectives, those beliefs would allow me to expand, to test the new waters, to try new things without anybody judging me, because the only thing that people knew about me was the things that I told them. And as I was learning myself, I'm always learning myself, you know what I mean? But as I'm learning myself, then being around new people allows you to expand. And that's experiences. So the question you got to ask yourself, when was the last time you spent more than a week on your own? When was the last time that you really smash past boundaries and put yourself into an extreme environment? When was the last time that you really did something different and nobody judged you? These are questions to think about, because this is what creates a brilliant you and a compelling future.
You see so many people now are caught up in what I call learned helplessness. When you've been disappointed, you get a gut check, but most people pick themselves back up. But if you get disappointed enough times, there's a point when your brain goes, the problem's permanent. It's just, or it's pervasive because I can't turn my business around. My whole life is over, which is not true. Or it's personal. There's something wrong with me.
Let me jump in there, crew. So what Tony's talking about there, and I love the way he said it. It's and my way to say it's trauma. You know, trauma can not just happen when you're a kid. Trauma can happen. All it is an intense emotional experience that like burns on the brain. It's called the synesthesia if you want to go there. Synesthesia is also a neuroscience medical condition where people see colors, which is wild, look into it. But synesthesia from a neurolinguistic point of view is actually tightly wound neural nets that are bound together. That's a trauma, right? And what we can do what I do with clients and what we do in the Radical Formula is we show you how to unlock them and like retrain that brain so the trauma doesn't have that emotional intensity anymore, right? I do it with my coaching, obviously, and things like that. But when we start to understand that, then it takes our power back. For me, it was, again, I spoke about it before, but a real traumatic thing, besides childhood traumas, which we all have to whatever degrees, right? We also have business traumas. And one of the things for me was I was an absolute badass, but when your best friend, your mentor, your everything steals all your money and rips you off and lies to you, it kind of creates trauma, right? And you take it personally and you think there is something wrong with you. It took me many, many years to heal from that. And now I have, and now I'm kicking ass again. But it took many years to heal from that. And those people that do those things to you, they don't realize the damage because they're already damaged. And hurt people hurt people, right? So if someone's ever hurt you or damaged you or anything, it's like we give a little piece of ourselves away. We give our energy, we give our focus, we give it's like a little piece of our soul goes with it. And it's like fragmented. That's trauma, right? And there's only one thing to do to be able to really be happy and fulfilled. I mean, I was going to say, damaged people or hurt, traumatized people also make amazing music, also become incredible actors, also make amazing art, right? They also become billionaires. But they're not fulfilled. Fulfilled's the wrong word because they could be fulfilled in their work. They're not complete. There's always damage. And tell me, I've looked in the minds of billionaires. I've looked in these people's brains. And the truth is behind it, there's always a pain they're pushing away from. You know what I mean? So to get the money and the fulfillment and the life that you want, you also have to be not healed of that trauma. And it's never personal. You don't do anything wrong. And if you did do something wrong, then, you got to forgive, you got to heal, you got to change that perspective around that memory. But also it's like we have micro traumas which build into our nervous system, and we can have hundreds of these micro traumas. And so there's so much healing that has to get done. And healing sounds a bit woo-woo, and part of it can be a bit woo-woo, but then we can use the science behind it to actually create a new response to that situation. Just like the same in the future, we want to create a new response to how we think, feel, and act about that future endeavor that we're about to do, or whatever it is. You get the idea, right?
I want to ask you hard stuff, like stuff maybe you don't get asked all the time, stuff that I get asked that I struggle with sometimes, and so. I get, obviously that they're their compelling future, got to change their physiology and their state. I believe the more I've been, working with people the last 30 years, winning is as much happiness, success, sometimes to me is as much environmental as it is mental. And I get asked often, and I know you probably do too. Hey, I'm in a relationship where I live with someone who's not as driven as I am, doesn't share my ambition, might even be antagonistic towards some of my visionary thinking, or even I come back from an event where I'm transformed, but they weren't in that same environment. So I'm in an environment, or I work somewhere where it's negative. Do you have any advice for someone in transcending a not supportive or negative environment?
Oh, the first thing is what you and I have already said. So I don't want to be repetitive, but I got to be repetitive. You've got to be in the strongest physical state or your mind's not going to work there. Okay. And then secondly, you've got to feed that mind. Those two things are prerequisite, because it doesn't matter what the external environment is. If the internal environment is re-engineered, I mean, think of it this way. You can try and take a general car and try and do a Sahara Desert run, or one of these crazy races that we could go for 7 days, right? You're gonna die, or you're gonna be crushed in the first 2 hours. But they've engineered those cars so that those trucks, so they can take the hits, so they can go through the desert, so they can go through the rain, so they can make all those things. We are in the middle of winter, and we need to re-engineer ourselves. We can't just sit around and say, I can't wait till it gets better. It doesn't work that way. You got to re-engineer you so that winter is your season, so that you're not freezing to death. You're learning to snowboard or ski or build this new version of your business or be with your family. I mean, literally, there is an advantage. And I know it sounds unbelievably overly optimistic, positive thinking, but you know me well enough. That's not where I come from. It's just smart. Intelligence shows everything will provide an opportunity. I have a 9-year-old daughter as a result of COVID, because we tried for years. I was like, I've never been home this long. I said, okay, if I can be home and serve 10 times many people, which I've been doing, I've had seminars that used to be 10, 15,000 people at a stadium, and now I've got seminars at 800,000 people, right? It's like, I can reach more people, come home to my daughter, be with my wife, but there was advantages. There was, I lost $100 million in the first 6 months of this area, and I could handle the business thing, but it's like in my mission, screw the economics. How do I turn this around? But then you find a way to turn around, find a way to serve people. Now I get to see whole families, because a lot of my seminars people do now digitally. Not just this free one, but my regular ones. I built this giant stadium, and now I can see in their living room. I see them with their kids who they didn't want to leave before to go, or their husband who walks by going, what is this? Within a day, he's like, this is incredible, So there's an opportunity that has to be found, but you got to build your first base within you so that it isn't the environment. Now, does the environment play a role? Of course, if you're a great sprinter and you try to run in mud, you're not going to maximize your capacity. And that's why it's critical to have a chosen family, so to speak. I have my family who I adore and love. And I have a friend I talked to the other day that I've known, since my first son was born. So, 40 years, right? A little less than 40. And he's a good guy, and he's doing better now. But years and years ago, he was always just not growing. Everybody around complained about him. He was taking advantage of my name. He was doing the crazy stuff. So I stayed friends with him, but I literally at one point said, I'm going to be a friend forever. But I said, we're not going to hang unless something shifts. And it was one of the toughest things I ever did, but it was a really smart thing. And now, 40 years later, he's made a shift. We have a nice relationship. He's grown. But you got to choose who you're going to surround yourself with. Now, you can't do that sometimes. Family or whatever the case may be, your husband or wife isn't aligned. Then you got to find how to get that alignment. And that's your job. Your job in a relationship is not to go get something. Your job in a relationship is to bring something to the table, which means you got to know, what do they want? What do they need? What do they desire? What are their wounds? I mean, relationships the easiest thing in the world. You got to decide, what do I really want in detail? And then you got to decide, what does this person really want, need, desire? And then I got to get addicted to meeting those needs, because if I meet their needs and I love doing it, like in the beginning of a relationship, most people get so excited to light up their partner. After a few years, it's like, would you take out the trash? What? They lose the joy, they lose the passion.
Right.
So it's a long answer to you to say, I don't believe environment is the most important thing. In fact, I know it's not. The inner environment is the most important thing. I could take you person after person in the worst environment who found a way to thrive still. And so if you buy it's the environment, you're gonna end up being a victim, even though that's not your mentality. It's just where it goes. Now, can I enhance my environment? Can I choose people to bring into my environment? People I want to learn from, I want to get coached by, people I want to help? Yes, and that's critical for your long-term success.
Again, let me jump in there, crew. I love what Tony's saying. Environments to me enhance who you are. Does that make sense? So, yes, I completely agree. You have to be a rock star, bulletproof, a badass, an assassin, a samurai warrior. That's just my definitions. You might want to be a gentle little fairy. I don't know. But whatever is the real you. But it's the truth, man. It's like, It's like going back to martial arts again. Why does a martial artist who's a professional fighter, why are they able to take so much impact, right? So many shots in the body and everything. Well, it's because they're conditioned to it. My system is neuro-conditioning. We have to condition the brain and nervous system to respond how we want it in any environment, right? So that's a constant thing that we're doing daily. Then we can step into an environment, and that environment then enhances who we are. So I always use this definition, used it for many, many years, but it's like being British myself, an English stately manor house. We can all imagine that, right? We can all imagine that. Imagine that big image, this big house. And then we walk into that house and we go into the library. You can imagine that, the colors, the smells, the sounds, the echoes, maybe the leather couches, the big, huge bookcases all around the walls. Maybe you've got one of those tall ladders because the books are so high that you have to go up and it rolls along. You know those places, right? And when you walk in there, what do you want to do? Well, yeah, you probably want to read, right? You probably want to sit down. You probably want to think. So the environment enhances who we are. If we're going in there and we want to play computer games, it might not be the right thing. We want to go in there and enhance ourselves. That's probably the environment. The environment then triggers the emotional or physical action or response inside of us. Does that make sense? So I love what Tony's saying, 100% right. And then we create the environment. And the environment is also your business partner. The environment is also your team. The environment is also your office, the view, the pictures, the paintings, the colors, right? Even the pens, the notepads, anything that you're using, that goes into your environment. And so we can design and then, guess what, create our physical environment. Because, again, topics for another time, but then we go to anchoring. So I think, crew, you best go and watch that interview. Yeah, Tony Robbins, Ed Mylett, it's a great, great interview. And I think we're going to wrap it up. So that's the end of episode 349. Yeah, we got the big 350, big 350 next week. So that's pretty cool. And hopefully you got lots out of that. Hopefully you loved it. And hopefully you write a review, Spotify, iTunes, whatever you want. Hopefully you share this episode, and hopefully you come and find me on social media somewhere, Andy Murphy Mindset. And if you are building a brand and you want to hit 7 figures, cut through that noise, and you want to understand what personal brand engineering is all about, then you need to go to theradicalformula.com. Do it. You've got 45 years experience between me and Ryan Alford. He's a marketing master. I'm obviously pretty good at what I do. Together, that's a powerful team. And you can be a part of these live masterminds, community, and digital library all in one. Beta prices, beta testing. Probably want to jump on this. If you want freedom and you want it a different way, you're a trader, then options, forex, stocks, crypto, whatever it is you're trading, all to create freedom, then you need the most foundational mindset performance training on the market. It's called the geniustrader.club. Yes, it's a club, and we've had incredible feedback, life-changing experiences, and you can be a part of that at this crazy low price as it is now. Prices will be going up on both of these, but you can jump in right now. So the geniustrader.club, or if you're building a brand and want to hit that 7 figures, let's do this. That's the radicalformula.com. So that's it. Go and do that now. And remember, this is your journey. This is your life. Let's make it the best year you've ever had. Until the next time, you have an amazing week. Much, much love. And oh yeah, one more thing. Why don't you smile for me?
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Mindset by Design podcast with your host and NLP expert, Andy Murphy. We'll catch you next time.